Let's go straight to our next guest. Haven't spoken to him for a while. Independent now MP, but was at Reform MP for Great Yarmouth. Rupert Lowe joins us. A very good morning to you, Rupert.
Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Bit hot and sweltering as everyone is today in the heat, but great to have you on. Two big issues I want to talk to you about. I know that you've been talking about and messaging about and speaking in the comments about over the last year or so, and that's benefits and also channel migrants. Let's talk first of all about the benefits bill. Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, published a plan for reforms yesterday. Labour MPs seem to think it goes way too far. I think most of us think it doesn't go far enough. Talking about the £52 billion a year current benefit and sickness benefit bill is going to be rising by £18 billion a year to 70 billion quid if there are no reforms, but it's still going to rise by £13 billion a year, even with her reforms, and we're going to have an extra 750,000 people claiming sickness benefits even after her reforms. Is she going far enough?
Well, of course not, Julia. But let me first say, and you did say this just now, that the important thing is that those people who do need help do get help.
Absolutely.
I think the genesis of this problem started, as usual, with Blair, Brown, Campbell and Mandelson. And what they wanted to do was create a dependency culture, which is effectively what Labour like, because they like statism, they like people who rely on the state. It usually means that Labour does well in an election.
Yeah. If everyone's on the payroll, they all vote to carry on getting paid. Yeah.
That's right. And as you know, the state accounts for, well, it depends on who you believe, but certainly over 46% of GDP directly and probably more indirectly. So, look, I mean, you mentioned Motability. My friends now buy second-hand Motability cars because they can't afford to buy new ones. So that sort of says to you where it's all gone wrong. And Motability, if you ever question Motability, which I've done, you get absolutely destroyed by people who are clearly benefiting unfairly from it. So I trust the government to distribute nothing sensibly. It's completely out of control. The DWP is just a farce. And I have a fantastic office manager in Great Yarmouth who's fantastic at doing all our casework. We're right on it, and we try and deliver for our constituents. He used to work at the DWP.
So he knows how it works.
He got so frustrated by the sort of indiscriminate handout of taxpayers' money that he had to come and do a more sensible job. And I'm absolutely delighted he did, because he's a fantastic chap.
But this is the issue, because we're constantly told by officials and by Labour, look, there's a tiny amount of fraud, it's a tiny percentage, it's not a big deal. But we're actually not talking about fraud in the strict legal sense, criminal sense a lot of times, although most of us will probably think it was criminal. We're talking about people who just, basically, They kind of exaggerate whatever their circumstances are. They say some of the key words they have to say when to claim benefits, whether it's their personal independence plan, whether it's other benefits. Loads of these assessments now carried out online. There's no way of verifying whether people are telling the truth. And the money is just handed out by people who seem in lots of benefits to be almost, to a certain extent, motivated financially in terms of how they're paid, in terms by actually making more decisions in people's favour.
Again, Julia, you can't entirely blame it. We've got 9 million people of working age who aren't working in the country. And, a country that's successful is a country that's based on enterprise, it's based on risk-taking, it's based on the individual. It's not based on the state. So somehow what we've got to do is reverse this issue. It's a huge issue.
Yeah. And it's a societal issue, isn't it?
It's a societal issue. It's driven largely by people like Blair, Brown, Campbell and Mandelson, who wanted this. They wanted a dependency culture. So what we've got to see, hopefully, and I think it is changing, the British people, the only chance they've got of changing this is to vote into power through first past the post at the next election, a selection of people who are going to change radically this misalignment which is happening within our country. And on the one hand, you've got HMRC who are crushing the private sector, in line with, Angela Rayner's workers' rights legislation, which is costing the private sector $5 billion. Rachel Reeves' tax increases so far, which is costing goodness knows. But I mean, the national insurance increase and the national insurance threshold cut is causing private businesses a huge problem. As you're seeing, probably employment numbers are dropping, obviously, because the economy is not growing, because Labour don't understand the genesis of how an economy grows. It grows through individual risk-taking, and it grows through people basically investing long-term and creating wealth, not by governments sort of following some fad or fashion with taxpayers' money and wasting it, which is look at HS2 as an example
and
of
again,
that.
we've got a government that seems to me to be totally out of touch, even though they're elected, the big majority of MPs totally out of touch with how most people live their lives. Mind you, they keep telling us our energy bills are going down. We can see that's not happening. This, of course, always ties into the issue of legal migration, where we need to import people to do jobs, and yet we've got all these people. And I think 5 million of that 9 million people are working age people who really should be at work. There are people who are students, they're carers, they're doing other things, which are totally, looking after young children. No one would be complaining about that. But roughly 5 million of those people, frankly, should be at work. And if they were our kids, they would be at work. I think we can safely say, Rupert. Not all young, but still. But let's talk about migration, because we're constantly told we need more and more people coming to this country because we haven't got anyone to do the work job, even though we're paying them to sit on their backsides. But we've also got the problem of illegal migration. We've now up to a 50% increase on the number of people coming across the channel on those small boats, 50 a boat, hundreds again yesterday. And last weekend, this lovely calm weather, just bringing them over, 50% higher than it was this time of year last year under the Tories. And we know one of the issues, again, is people want to come because they know they can't be deported. Even in the case of a grooming gang, and you've spoken out an awful lot on this issue, and all credit to you for that, but Pakistan is refusing to take back the ringleaders of the Rochdale child grooming scandal after they renounced their Pakistani citizenship. And so Qari Abdul Rauf and Adil Khan, two of the worst grooming offenders that have ever been convicted, they lost their appeals against deportation in 2018, 7 years ago, but are still in this country because Pakistan won't take them back. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm quite clear on it, Julia. I think we give all this foreign aid out. I think we give Pakistan £133 million a year.
Yep.
And we therefore have leverage. So if they refuse to take back these rapists, and you only got to look at the way in which our legal system is getting it all wrong when you look at the sentences that are handed out to these people, and you juxtapose that against the sentence that was handed out to Lucy Connolly.
Yep.
We're trying to hopefully have a debate on that issue in Parliament if enough people sign our petition, which we're hoping will go live soon. So I think we need to start getting tough, and we need a government that puts the interests of the British taxpayers at the top of the agenda. I think I'm right in saying that at the moment we're spending something like $1 billion a month on foreign national asylum seekers and something like $1 billion a year on illegal asylum seekers, or illegal economic migrants, as I call most of them. So again, the thing is, it's out of control. Our government is not an effective mechanism through which to manage our borders, as we've seen since Brexit. People voted for their borders back, and they haven't got them back. So, I mean, honestly, Julia, there's so much wrong. Where do we start? I think we have to have, and collectively, we need to start scrutinising the permanent secretaries, who I would argue, given that Parliament's been undermined by I think basically the two-party system. It's been the primacy of Parliament, the primacy of the elected MPs has been undermined. The ability of the people in Parliament has been undermined by selection processes from Cameron and Blair. So as a result, the civil service is out of control. They're
no longer civil servants. They think they can direct policy. They're open about it now.
Julia, they're definitely not. So I think, the media needs to start turning its attention. Who are these permanent secretaries? What do they believe in? What are their names? Are they fulfilling their function properly? Because they're actually the people running the country.
Yeah.
As I've said in the past, the front bench has most of them have never done anything real in their lives. They've never run a business. There's an over-representation of human rights lawyers throughout our entire...
And again, they're led by the civil servants who've been there. And again, I agree with you. I think it's civil servants are part of the problem, but I also think that lawyers are part of the problem, or courts and judges.
Totally, Julia.
Let me get to another case just finally.
Lawyers are enriched by all this.
Latest story, an Afghani asylum seeker, Sadiq Niksat, who entered the UK legally on a small boat, imagine that. 2 years later, he raped a 15-year-old schoolgirl. Yesterday, he was handed a 12-year extended sentence at Livingston High Court after the rape in Falkirk Town Centre back in October 2023. basically he approached a girl who was 15, asked for her phone number, asked if she had a boyfriend, made sexual remarks, and then basically dragged her behind a pub and raped her. She said she kept telling him she was 15. What was absolutely extraordinary to me was his defence counsel, Janice Green, told an earlier hearing that her client had not been educated about the significant cultural differences between the UK and Afghanistan, and there was a cultural barrier and indeed a language barrier between Nigzat's home country, where child marriage was common. And she said, I'm not suggesting that means that he reasonably believed, or he was that the complainer, the woman, the girl was consenting, but that there's a reason why he could have misunderstood. Well, given that you're not supposed to have sex before marriage in Islam, I'm not quite sure why raping a 15-year-old behind a pub would count as being part of his culture, as an extraordinary defence for her to offer, and she should be ashamed of herself. But the idea that, well, he thought it was okay to do this, presumably because this was a girl who was not covered up, not shrouded, no face covered, so he thought she was frankly game. And this is part of the problem, isn't it? We now know, a huge number of sexual assaults. We know a huge number of the grooming gangs from particular areas in Pakistan, their heritage, but sex assaults carried out by foreigners coming to this country who have a completely different culture to the one that we have here.
Well, I think there is a cultural issue, Julia, and possibly, our what I call underage white working class girls, is the family unit as strong as the family unit within the Islamic community? So what are the reasons? I think we need to start to analyse why this has been happening. And my rape gang inquiry, which we're carrying on with to hold the government to account, because I don't know about you, but I don't trust governments. Not only do they run up a huge bill with all these inquiries, they usually take forever. Yeah. And they usually end up with the establishment judging the establishment, which means you don't get the truth. So I think in his case, you asked me the question, it's a bit like if you aid and abet somebody who's doing something illegal, you yourself are judged as breaking the law. Yeah. Whether or not you know you're aiding and abetting something illegal. Now, it doesn't, for me, serve as a defence, the fact that he doesn't know that he's doing something wrong. Yeah. He's breaking our laws. He is effectively treating somebody underage in a way he shouldn't. And for me, it's quite straightforward. I would simply deport him. I don't think...
I just put him on a dinghy and send him out into the channel.
I'd send him straight back to wherever he's from.
But we can't. Legally we can't. We can't fly him back to Afghanistan. They won't have him back.
Well, if those people won't accept them, then we cut off all foreign aid until they start to behave sensibly, because we can't have people here who don't respect our culture, don't respect our laws, and actually damage our own way of life. I think the British people have had enough of it now. The British people, Julia, are incredibly long-suffering. Yeah. But do you know what? I think they've got pretty much to breaking point.
I agree with you. I feel that there has been an absolute change in the last few months when people have gone, we're done now, this is it, enough is enough. Rupert Lowe, really good to get you back on the show, independent, former Reform MP for Great Yarmouth. Thank you for joining us. Philip Ingram, your response on that particular issue?
Well, I think that lawyer, if the cultural norms of the country that he came from were then applied and the family went and beat him to death for raping their daughter, the lawyer might have a slightly different view in using that as a defence. Yeah. So you can't have it one way and not the other way. Yeah. And this is where...
Also, could I use that defence in Afghanistan? No, in my culture, I don't have to cover up. Exactly. So I can do what I want. I shall wear a bikini walking down the street, shall I?
The most interesting thing Rupert said, and I agree with him completely, is I think the British people have got to that point where we've had enough. Yep. And I'm quite a mild-mannered and I will accept most things, and I feel myself now going, when's the next protest coming? Because I'm going to get involved in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Peaceful?
Oh, peaceful, completely peaceful.
But these things have a habit, especially in hot, sweltering weather, of not remaining peaceful.
No. But
I think, again, how many times are we going to vote and tell our governments of different hues, this is what we want done? How many times is it not going to be done? And we're just going to say, enough is enough?
Last week, 2,222 illegal migrants came across the channel.
Nice round number.
Yeah, that is 111 million quid a year we're paying from the Caribbean. That's in one week.
But it's 2,222 young men mostly. Because, by the way, Darren Jones, Treasury Minister, they are mostly men coming to this country, and many of whom are just like this man, who simply, this Afghanistani, who simply do not have the same morals and values and culture that we share, and they're putting particularly our young women and our young girls at risk.